What if one of history's greatest heroes wasn't a hero at all? For more than 2,000 years, Odysseus has been celebrated as the brilliant king who defeated Troy, outsmarted monsters, and survived impossible dangers. But there is one part of his story that almost nobody talks about. Nearly every sailor who left Troy beside him died before reaching home. Entire cities were destroyed during his journey, and when he finally returned after 20 years, he didn't come home to peace, he came home to bloodshed. So why has history remembered him as a legend instead of a warning? The answer lies in a journey shaped not only by impossible choices, but by a hidden war between two powerful gods. While Poseidon swore to destroy him, Athena quietly fought to keep him alive. To understand who Odysseus truly was, we have to return to the war where everything began, with the fall of Troy. For 10 long years, the walls of Troy had refused to fall. The greatest warriors of Greece had fought countless battles, yet every assault ended the same way, with failure. The city stood unconquered, protected by towering walls that seemed impossible to breach. Many believed the war would never end. But while stronger armies searched for victory on the battlefield, Odysseus searched for it in a different place. He understood that Troy could not be defeated by force alone. It would have to be defeated from within. His solution seemed almost absurd. Build an enormous wooden horse, hide Greek soldiers inside it, and leave it behind as a gift while the army appeared to sail away. It was a plan unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Yet whether it would become the greatest military deception in history or the greatest mistake of his life depended on one impossible question. Would the people of Troy believe it? The Trojan horse had worked exactly as Odysseus had imagined. Troy burned. The war was finally over, and after 10 exhausting years, the Greek fleet began the long voyage home. Every sailor believed the worst was behind them. They had survived the greatest war of their generation. But fate had prepared something far more terrifying than any battlefield. During their journey, the ships reached a lonely island, unlike any they had seen before. There were no villages, no temples, no signs of civilization, only silent hills, grazing sheep, and an enormous cave overflowing with food, milk, and cheese. Odysseus' crew wanted to take the supplies and leave immediately, but Odysseus refused. Curiosity overcame caution. He wanted to meet whoever lived there. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, the true owner finally returned. It was Polyphemus, a gigantic Cyclops, whose single eye stared directly into the frightened strangers. Without saying a word, he rolled an enormous boulder across the cave entrance, trapping every man inside. Then, before their horrified eyes, he seized 2 of Odysseus' sailors and devoured them alive. At that moment, Odysseus understood a terrible truth. Strength would never defeat this monster. Only intelligence could. Working together, Odysseus and his men quietly sharpened a massive wooden stake, while the Cyclops lay asleep after drinking the powerful wine they had offered him. With one desperate strike, they blinded the giant, sending him into a furious roar that echoed across the island. When the other Cyclopes rushed to help, they asked who had attacked him. "Nobody!" Polyphemus cried. Believing the giant had lost his mind, they walked away. Before sunrise, Odysseus tied each surviving sailor beneath the giant sheep, allowing the flock to leave the cave while the blinded monster searched only above their backs. Against all odds, they escaped alive. But as the island disappeared behind them, Odysseus could not resist claiming the victory for himself. He shouted his real name across the sea. Polyphemus lifted his hands towards the sky and called upon his father, Poseidon, ruler of the seas. The god heard his son's plea. From that moment, every wave, every storm, and every mile separating Odysseus from Ithaca became part of Poseidon's revenge. Violent storms drove Odysseus's fleet far from its course until they reached a strange coastline surrounded by towering cliffs. The harbor looked calm, offering the exhausted sailors a perfect place to rest. Believing they had finally escaped the wrath of the sea, most of the fleet sailed inside the narrow entrance. Only Odysseus, sensing that something felt wrong, anchored his own ship outside the harbor. A small group of scouts entered the nearby settlement searching for food and fresh water. Instead, they discovered the Laestrygonians, gigantic cannibals whose king attacked without warning. Within moments, enormous rocks crashed down from the cliffs, smashing the trapped Greek ships one after another. The narrow harbor became a deadly prison. Sailors desperately tried to escape, but there was nowhere to run. Watching the destruction unfold from the open sea, Odysseus immediately cut the ropes of his own ship and ordered his men to row with every ounce of strength they had. When the nightmare finally ended, only one vessel remained. The greatest fleet that had left Troy had almost completely vanished. After escaping the Laestrygonians, Odysseus was left with only one ship and a handful of exhausted survivors. Their next destination was the mysterious island of Aeaea, where a magnificent palace stood hidden deep within the forest. Believing they had finally found safety, Odysseus sent several sailors to explore the island. A beautiful woman named Circe welcomed them with warmth, rich food, and sweet wine. But the feast concealed a terrible secret. The moment the sailors drank from her cup, a powerful spell transformed them into swine, while their human minds remained trapped inside. Only Eurymachus escaped and returned in terror, warning Odysseus never to enter the palace. Refusing to abandon his companions, Odysseus confronted Circe himself. To her surprise, her magic failed, and for the first time, the legendary sorceress stood before a man she could not control. Instead of becoming enemies, they reached an uneasy peace. Circe restored every sailor to human form, and the Greeks remained on her island for nearly a year, recovering their strength before continuing the voyage. But when Odysseus finally asked how he could return to Ithaca, Circe gave an answer unlike any he expected. If he wished to reach home, he would first have to sail into the Underworld and seek the spirit of the prophet Tiresias. Circe's final warning left no room for doubt. If Odysseus wished to return home, he would first have to travel where no living hero had ever willingly gone before, the Underworld. Guided by her instructions, the Greeks sailed to the edge of the world, where the rivers of the dead met beneath an endless sky of darkness. There, Odysseus performed an ancient sacrifice, pouring blood into the earth as countless restless spirits emerged from the shadows. Among them appeared the blind prophet Tiresias, who revealed that the journey home was far from over. He warned Odysseus never to harm the sacred cattle of Helios, or every remaining sailor would perish. Before leaving, Odysseus met the spirit of his own mother, who had died while waiting for his return, then spoke with Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greece, who confessed that ruling the dead was worth less than living as the poorest man on earth. When the final spirits faded into darkness, Odysseus understood that escaping monsters would be easier than escaping fate itself. After returning from the Underworld, Odysseus once again sought Circe's guidance. This time, her warning was simple, but terrifying. Ahead lay the island of the Sirens, creatures whose enchanting voices had lured countless sailors to their deaths. No man who followed their song had ever returned. Circe ordered Odysseus to seal the ears of every sailor with beeswax so they would hear nothing. But Odysseus, driven by an unshakable desire to witness every mystery of the world, chose a different path. He commanded his crew to bind him tightly to the ship's mast and, no matter how desperately he begged, never set him free. As their ship approached the rocky island, the Sirens began to sing. Their voices promised forgotten knowledge, endless glory, and the answers to every question that had ever haunted mankind. Overcome by the irresistible melody, Odysseus struggled against the ropes, shouting for his men to release him. Yet the sailors obeyed his earlier command, tightening the ropes instead. Only after the haunting voices finally faded into the distance did they remove the wax from their ears. For the first time, someone had heard the song of the Sirens and lived to tell the tale. After escaping the Sirens, Odysseus faced an even crueler choice. Ahead lay a narrow strait guarded by two deadly horrors. On one side waited Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool powerful enough to swallow an entire ship. On the other lurked Scylla, a terrifying creature hidden high within the cliffs, whose 6 long necks could seize sailors in an instant. Circe had warned him that no man could defeat either monster. Trying to avoid Charybdis would destroy the entire crew, while passing Scylla meant sacrificing only a few. With no other hope, Odysseus steered the ship toward the cliffs. As the vessel slipped through the strait, Scylla struck without warning, snatching 6 of his finest men before disappearing into the darkness. Their screams echoed across the sea, but Odysseus could do nothing except sail on. Soon afterward, the exhausted survivors reached the sacred island of Helios. Tiresias had warned them never to touch the sun god's immortal cattle, no matter how desperate their hunger became. But while Odysseus slept, his starving crew ignored every warning and slaughtered the sacred animals. When Helios demanded justice, Zeus answered with a single thunderbolt. The sea exploded beneath the ship, shattering it into splinters. Every sailor was swallowed by the waves. Only Odysseus survived, drifting alone across the endless sea, while Poseidon's curse claimed every companion who had left Troy beside him. After Zeus shattered the last Greek ship, Odysseus drifted alone across the endless sea for days, clinging to a broken piece of wreckage, as the waves carried him farther from everything he had ever known. At last, he reached the hidden island of Ogygia, where the immortal nymph Calypso rescued the exhausted kings and slowly fell in love with him. She cared for his wounds and offered him a life free from war, suffering, and even death itself. If he stayed beside her, she promised him eternal youth and immortality. Yet every evening, Odysseus climbed the lonely cliffs overlooking the sea, staring toward the distant horizon. His thoughts never left Ithaca or Penelope, who had waited for him through every passing year. Watching his endless sorrow from Olympus, Athena pleaded with Zeus to show mercy. The king of the gods agreed and sent Hermes to Ogygia with a single command: Calypso must let Odysseus go. Though heartbroken, she obeyed the will of the gods. She gave him timber, tools, food, fresh water, and cloth for a sail, helping him build a sturdy raft with his own hands. After 7 long years of captivity, Odysseus sailed away once more, believing home was finally within reach. After leaving Ogygia, Odysseus finally reached the shores of Ithaca. For the first time in 20 years, his homeland stood before his eyes. But before he could step forward, the goddess Athena appeared. She warned him that powerful suitors had taken over his palace, believing their king would never return. If Odysseus revealed himself too soon, he would be killed before reaching his own home. To protect him, Athena disguised the legendary king as an old beggar. His strong body became bent with age, his face wrinkled, and his royal appearance vanished beneath worn, ragged clothes. No one would recognize the hero who had defeated Troy. Athena guided him to the humble hut of the loyal swineherd Eumaeus. Though he had no idea who the stranger truly was, Eumaeus welcomed him with kindness, offering food, shelter, and respect. Soon afterward, Athena secretly brought Telemachus home from his own journey. Father and son were finally reunited after 20 long years apart. Together, they began preparing a dangerous plan to reclaim the kingdom that had always belonged to Odysseus. While Odysseus and Telemachus prepared their secret plan, another story had been unfolding inside the palace of Ithaca. For 20 years, Penelope had waited for the man who sailed to Troy and never returned. Each passing year brought new rumors of Odysseus' death, yet Penelope refused to accept that he was gone. She remained faithful, raising Telemachus and keeping his father's memory alive, while the kingdom slowly changed around her. Then the suitors arrived. Dozens of powerful men filled Odysseus' palace, demanding that Penelope choose one of them as her new husband. They feasted on his wealth, insulted Telemachus, and refused to leave until she surrendered. But Penelope found a way to delay them. She announced that she would choose a husband only after finishing a burial shroud for Laertes, Odysseus' elderly father. Every day, she sat at her loom and patiently wove the cloth. Every night, when no one was watching, she secretly unraveled what she had made. For years, her deception remained hidden, until one of her servants betrayed her secret. With the final thread of her plan broken, Penelope knew she could delay the suitors no longer. So she announced one last challenge. She would marry the man who could string Odysseus' great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. She did not know that the man who once held that bow was already inside her palace. Odysseus stepped forward and quietly asked to hold the bow. The suitors laughed at the old beggar, certain he would fail like everyone before him. But with calm confidence, Odysseus lifted the great bow, examined it for a brief moment, and effortlessly pulled back the string. The hall fell completely silent. He released a single arrow, and it flew cleanly through all 12 axe heads, proving that the true king had returned. Before anyone could understand what had happened, another arrow struck Antinous. The proud leader of the suitors collapsed to the floor. Shock spread across the hall as Odysseus revealed his true identity. Telemachus rushed to his father's side, and together they faced the armed suitors. Athena watched over them once again, guiding their hands as the battle filled the palace. One by one, the suitors fell, unable to escape the justice they had brought upon themselves. When the fighting ended, silence returned to Ithaca's great hall. After 20 years of exile and hardship, Odysseus had finally reclaimed his home. Penelope still could not believe the man before her was truly Odysseus. To be certain, she gave one final test, asking a servant to move their marriage bed. Odysseus immediately protested, knowing the bed could never be moved because he had carved it around the trunk of a living olive tree. At that moment, Penelope knew the truth. After 20 long years, husband and wife were finally reunited. Peace returned to Ithaca, and Odysseus, once again, ruled the kingdom he had fought so hard to reclaim. His incredible journey became one of the greatest legends of Greek mythology, reminding generations that courage, wisdom, and perseverance can overcome even the longest trials. What do you think was Odysseus's greatest challenge throughout his journey? Was he actually a hero? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more legendary myths and ancient mysteries. And be sure to watch our other videos to continue exploring the incredible world of history and mythology.